So if you live anywhere in this area of Raleigh, I'm your girl. And I'm so proud to represent this district for my second term. People are like, I studied political science. No, I studied theater. That was my background. And then I went into restaurant work, met my husband, who is an amazing chef. Through all of those experiences, my community organizing experience, I said, what better? I want to be what I want to see in government. Affordable housing is a huge topic. And I think everyone's going to have a different expectation of what affordable means. Some people, it means uplifting out of homelessness. Some people, it's my firefighters and my nurses and my police officers who are like, I serve the city. I would love to be able to live in the city I serve.
Yeah. Okay, the Jentry Podcast. I know that you will be loving it. We here to break it down so that you start to understand your local government. Who are the leaders? Time to get active, do something about it. Dealing with jobs, the workforce, and affordable housing. Motivate and inspire. Elevate, take it higher. For the next generation. Knowledge is power for your community. Giving you the info that you really need. Time to make a change and a difference. Tune in, don't miss it. It's the Jentry. The Jentry Podcast. The Jentry Podcast. Making a change, switching it up.
Welcome to the Jentry Podcast. Today, we are doing a very special episode. We are live in Raleigh with my council member, Christina Jones. So I'm super excited about this. I love getting into the community, and who better to speak with than you? How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm so glad we're here. You're right behind our district. So if you live anywhere in this area of Raleigh, I'm your girl. And I'm so proud to represent this district for my second term. Going into next year, we'll do elections again. And so I'm hopeful that we'll have another turn to do this, but I love my job.
I love that. And I love how you represent us. But before we jump into the heavy stuff, how did you get into public service?
I have not a clear path. People are like, I studied political science. No, I studied theater. That was my background. And then I went into restaurant work, met my husband, who is an amazing chef. Delicious. I'm so lucky. And then I went into substitute teaching. And through all of those experiences, my community organizing experience, I said, what better? I want to be what I want to see in government. And so I said, there are no rules. Once you get to the position, you make the position whatever you want. And so that's what we've done. We've made it what I want it to be. And hopefully that translates to the community.
I love that. So living in your district is amazing. Now, one thing that when I interview people across the nation that always comes up is affordable housing. How are we doing on affordable housing, and what are some of the things that are either tough or things that you think we can work on?
Affordable housing is a huge topic. And I think everyone's going to have a different expectation of what affordable means. Some people, it means uplifting out of homelessness. Some people, it's my firefighters and my nurses and my police officers who are like, I serve the city. I would love to be able to live in the city I serve. And so there's a wide spectrum. The way we define it is through AMI, so annual median income. The current annual median income in Raleigh is $122,000. So what you'll hear is a bunch of acronyms and, all right, well, we're serving 80% AMI. And what that means is that from that 122,000, what is 80% of that? And I'm not a math whiz, so I'm just going to say it's like 100,000. That means that whatever affordability, if we're targeting 80%, that it's people who make 100,000. And so as you go down, 60% would be less than that. 50% is less than that. And that's where I try and make sure everyone understands before we go into the topic of affordable housing, because there's such a wide spectrum that it may not always hit on what every person expects as affordable, but as a city, we need to cover all of our bases. I need to make sure that those who are being uplifted out of homelessness, that we're focusing on them, but then also that our firefighters can live in the city as well. And so having that wide of a gap, it makes the conversation even more difficult. So when we say, how are we doing? There are portions of that we're doing phenomenal on. I think we just opened up Kings Ridge, and that is 100 affordable units that are like hitting the low under 30% AMI, really getting people out of homelessness. And that's over in our District C. That just opened maybe a few months ago. So That's phenomenal. I'm so proud of that. I'm proud of the partnerships that our development community has begun to offer in conditions, meaning rules that we add to zoning cases, in which we say, hey, I'd love for you to include at 80%, at 60%. And so they'll say, okay, for 10 years, we're doing this. That's really great, but it's not fully realized until it's built. So the problem that we're running into there is that we have a lot of promises, pinky promises saying, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. But due to many things, including interest rates, including their financing, they're not able to build it right now, which means I don't have it to share with you. So for 6 years, we've been doing these conditions that's either adding money to our affordable housing fund or units on the ground, but we haven't actually realized any of that yet. And so while we're making progress, it doesn't feel like that to some people, to a lot of the community, because they're not seeing it. So it's a loaded question to say, how are we doing? Because there's different metrics as to what that really means to people. We could always be doing better. And I think we should never sit on our laurels and say, okay, well, these conditions are the only way to go. No, it's how are we investing in the nonprofits that are already doing the work? My Habitat for Humanity, my CASA, my Families Together. How are we making sure that they have the resources that they need in order to do the work outside of us and in a more targeted fashion? So those partnerships are growing. I've worked with all of those organizations. You've got DHIC. And in this climate, as we walk into this political climate, we also know that nonprofits are going to be losing their funding. So really now my job is how do we reallocate funding there? We don't have a money tree in the city. I can't just be like, oh, here you go. That does come from property taxes. So how do we get the development community to help us with that? And I think those are strategies that we can begin to massage out, but they aren't, we don't have specific goals for that yet.
It's such a balancing act because, as I said, I speak to the people across the nation and density comes up. And one of the issues that I often hear is people understand the need for density and understand the need for housing to make sure everybody is housed and there's options. But when it comes to putting that density in their neighborhood, it may be a little bit of a different conversation. How do you think your community members, such as myself, are reacting to some of the changes that, even if they haven't done now, they know that they've been proposed and they're potentially going to be happening?
Sure. And we do need that. We've got high density, whether that's stories and tall buildings or over in Briar Creek, which is this area all the way up here. That's where my kids go to school over there. That's our densest area in Raleigh. And it's not due to height. It's due to a lot of units in the same area, apartments, townhouses, things like that. What I try and get across the community, and I just had a community meeting on Wednesday and we had this conversation, is I said, we have to get used to being a little bit uncomfortable because change is uncomfortable and we are ever changing. That's just what life is. The only constant is change. And I feel that my job is to help translate what's happening so that we can see the benefits as well as address the concerns, because both can be true. We need density. I need that. However, what about our stormwater? What about these? I mean, we're with all this rain we're experiencing, and in your area, we are seeing, oh gracious, we've got people's backyards that are being washed out. And that too is a concern that we need to be able to answer for what we're doing. This project or a project may not solve everything because they're not magical projects. They can't do everything. But if I can say, okay, this is the little piece of the pie that this development, whether that's through conditions or it's through what's already required in our Unified Development Ordinance or our UDO, I need to be able to give the assurances to the community and calm their fears. It works best when I have that partnership with the development community. We can come as a team together and say, this is what's being done. What else would make life a little bit better? And knowing that we're not all going to get what we want. You're not going to get every single thing. I don't want it to be 20 stories. I want it to be 10. We need some density so that we have that. So there are compromises that need to be made. But that's my job to have that conversation. So sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't.
And we were speaking before this. I know you do such a good job of hearing people's concerns, letting them know what the realities of the system are, because it obviously government has rules, but then also letting them know different strategies in the future of what can be done to potentially maybe get a different outcome if they are engaged and going to meetings and asking the right questions.
Right. And that's so important because when we walk into this and our only outcome is, I want you to deny this case, there's not much I can work with there. But when we go in and we say, I would love for us to discuss the transportation problems that we're going to have, the stormwater runoff, the affordable housing concern, now we have actionable items that I can present to the development community and say, this is what the community wants to see reflected in this project. Now we can judge what their response is together, and we can do it as a team. I've had many cases where I have representative from the community, I have the applicant, I have their lawyer team, and then city staff. And we sit there and we just go back and forth answering questions because that's our job to do. And it does make it easier when people understand. So it's really about learning. Anyone who's open to learning about their city, that's where the first step. The first step is just being ready to be a sponge of information.
Again, I don't think I know. That is the part of the reason I do what I do, is to hopefully give everybody a little bit of information from the people that are literally pounding the pavement and being the voice for the community. So you spoke about magic, there's no magic development earlier, but let's say we did have some magic. Let's say we had a limited budget, a limited time, a limited workforce. What is one challenge that if you could just snap your fingers and change, what would that one challenge be?
It would be the General Assembly.
Okay.
And that is because there are so many rules that we have to follow that are not city ordinances that come to us straight from the state. Due to the fact that we are what's called the Dillon state, they get to make all the rules, and they pretty much give us the ability to do anything in regulation. Whether we'll stick with zoning, since you're talking about development, they allow us to be able to do zoning, and they can take that away at any point. And so when we're talking about these concerns, why it's so crucial for us to have that conversation is because I don't want to set either side off, whether it's the residential side or the development side, that could, if the General Assembly were to look at that, say, you know what, you're not doing a good job. We're gonna take that back from you, and then we lose all ability to do that. And I don't think that's good for anybody. I don't think either side wants that outcome. But I get to play that role of referee that goes, well, we're coming too far. Let's come back to the center. I would say if I could magically change something, it would be to give us a little bit more flexibility to manage our cities, because we are, what I like to say to people, we are the most tangible form of government that residents will see. They can call me. I give so many people my phone number, or we go out for lunch and we can answer questions. And I don't always have the answer, but I can connect people with that. So I would love to really strengthen that relationship with the General Assembly so that they could trust that we are doing the work for the community and with the community, and that they can trust our judgment.
I usually don't hear that one. I've yet to hear that one, but it is so interesting. You bring up a interesting point of a Dillon state versus a home rule state. Can you maybe talk through maybe just like a situation of collaboration, or a time that you maybe wanted something and it wasn't granted, or you weren't able to work together? You just give an example of working with or what collaboration looks like with the General Assembly.
That's a great question. I'll start off by saying that my relationships with the General Assembly representatives are crucial.
Mm.
Means we have a House of Representative and we have Senate, just like on the national level, and really helping them understand as my representatives what we go through. Because not all of them have been part of local government, and so when they get into that role, they don't know the complexities of what maybe a zoning challenge is that we have. And so part of my job, aside from residential and development interests, is also building that bridge and the communication with our representatives that are in the General Assembly to say, hey, this is a concern. I will say recently, whenever there's a bill, so every 2 years they try to pass a budget. And during that, you'll see these bills that come out. And what I've appreciated about what we're creating is my representatives reaching out to me and going, hey, here's this bill. Will you look it over and let me know your concerns? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is phenomenal, because they shouldn't have to do all that like work. They have so many other things to do. I'm already doing that work. And so that partnership, to be able to send my feedback and say, here's what's okay about the bill, here's where I'm a little bit concerned. Now it's their job to go and advocate for those things. And I have to trust their judgment as well. It did result in that bill not passing and not being heard. So that feels like a win. Like, yes, that's great. But that trust has to go both ways. And I have to be able to give them trust, even when I am questionable about some of the decisions that come out of the General Assembly.
I love the fact that you showed that the trust goes both ways. And in conversations we've actually had before, one of the things that you brought up is you have interests, or your community has interests. And sometimes you have to then work in a bipartisan manner or with other stakeholders to understand that maybe what you're trying to get across in that form. So if you wanted 100% of all the things you want, it's not going to go through. So you'll get zero, but I can get 75% through. And that goes through like some collaboration. Could you maybe speak through like instance, even locally, where you had to collaborate to get to the best resolution, but not the perfect resolution?
Oh my gosh, I would say one of our most recent cases, it was back to a zoning case where they wanted to put a model home in the middle of an already established neighborhood. And that neighborhood was like, what? Absolutely not. And we had months. I mean, it was almost a year of conversations where I was letting them know, here are arguments that'll work with council. Here are some that are not going to work with council. So while you may be really passionate about the fact that you think that this is going to lower your property value, that's not my job. Property value is not the purview of council. So if you use that argument, then you're going to turn off some counselors who then say, was that privilege speaking or is it actual concern? And so we got to work through that. And in that area, in that zoning case, I was not confident that it was going to pass. And so I said, really, let's focus on things that could sway some counselors. And the neighbors came back and said, well, they're wanting to put it to single family zoning, but we would prefer, if it means that we get its commercial aspect, this model home, if they don't do that, we would prefer to have townhomes here because we want people that want to be with us in community. And that's like a big tenet of NIMBY. You've got this view that, oh, if people don't want development, that means they don't want anyone else there. And it was our way of breaking through that mold and saying, that's not true. That's not true. And we can't just live in these weird ultimatums. Either you're for or against it. Democrat, Republican, NIMBY. There's so much nuance in between that. And the neighbors, so proud of them because they were able to stand at that dais as we were doing that public hearing. After I had told them, guys, I don't think we have the votes, but you walk in there with your head held high because your work has been amazing. And they did. And they said just that. They said, we want people who want to live here. And if that means townhomes, we would prefer that over this open home, this model home here. And that all of a sudden sparked and counselors. So you'll watch them and they go, wait, did you, if we leave it the way it is, you could have single family dwellings there. And they were like, yeah, we are saying do we prefer townhomes. And that shocked council. They were like, wait, what? That's not what people normally, it's not my vision of reality. And that's what we want to do. I want to break those molds. I want to say, no, we're not going to stereotype people on either side. We're not going to vilify the people who are building our future in developers. And we're also not going to vilify the people who really just want to build community. So with that case got a unanimous denial, which is never that I can't say never, but it hasn't happened in the time that I've been involved in council. And I didn't think it was going to go that way at all. So that collaboration, that learning and that understanding of what is the betterment of the community and how can we make this area better, it worked out in their favor in that regard. So I will say I'm super proud of my neighbors. They know who they are. I'm so proud of that. And I want us to continue to break through molds that way.
I think that is incredible and shows that I often feel we all want similar things and we're not as far apart as we think we are. And then it's like when you think outside the box, you find something that is not the immediate issue, but actually a solution that works for both parties. So
and it brings the temperature down because as we're seeing on every scale of government, temperatures are rising and we all think we have the answer. And all of a sudden, when we have those opportunities where we can lower that temperature and people can go, oh my God, I see you. That's what I believe local government's job is. My job is to help everyone see the reflection of themselves and each other. So I love when that happens. It doesn't always happen, but I love when it does.
There it is. I definitely love that. So everything that you're telling me, it sounds like a balancing act almost. I feel like it's also almost game of telephone. It's like you have so many different stakeholders. You're trying to make sure that their interests are heard. At the very least, everybody understands the system that we're playing in, but you then have to communicate that to everyone. So I definitely envy you and I respect you, but envy is something that I do not. But there's more stakeholders than people even think. Like obviously you have councils, mayors, city managers, then you have state senators, state reps, the assembly, but then you have other groups. You have like different special interest groups. It could be nonprofits, lobbyists, PACs. I'm trying to think of not yet anything. So how do you balance those interests? And maybe can you give an example for our viewers that don't necessarily know what some of those potential constituents are?
Sure. There's so many, and it's hard to name them all, but I'll focus on one that I'm super proud of, and that is our Citizens Advisory Councils. And so what that was is back in the 70s, we had Mayor Clarence Leitner started this for this purpose. How do we make sure that resident voices are encapsulated in the decisions that we make, whether it's with development or engagement or whatever the case may be? And so we started that in the 70s. What led me to run was because in 2020, the city decided to just disband it after over 40 years. And I was the chair and I was like, wait, what? That doesn't, why don't you want to, like, you're the city, you need our voice in order to know what we want. And I didn't understand that disconnect. So that's what led me to run the first time. And within my first term, really working with what was a defunct CAC organization that I was leading and now going, okay, how do we bring it back? And motioning last term to say, yes, let's try, let's start, and working with the organization to say, here are the pitfalls. It's not that we were a perfect organization. There were things that became very what people will call NIMBY, and we just used it as a vessel to not approve development. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's what we did, but that was the narrative. And so spent my whole time in council trying to balance those issues. The compromises that had to take place was once developers had to go through CACs to then go to planning commission to come to council, that in the last term was not something that was going to get us to bringing it back. And so the compromises that the leadership team with the CACs and I had to have the discussions and say, well, we're going to not require development. And you're more than welcome to have developers at the meetings, but that's not going to be a piece of the development, the rezoning puzzle for the city of Raleigh. That was a big compromise for the CACs to be able to say, okay, well, we'll start there, knowing that in the future we may be able to bring it back. That was about making sure that if we were able to do it without, that we got those votes. And we got a unanimous approval to bring them back. We spent the last year and a half working on what those specifics are. How do I get you community access space? How do I get you Zoom login information and succession planning? So it's not just the same voices. It's moving and bringing people in. And we started the first step of that. I think I'm coming up with a new term, and I say perfection is the detriment to progress, because we sacrifice progress in the pursuit of perfection when it's always attainable. We can always get there, but it doesn't need to be right now. And so how do we take those first steps? And we're doing that in our council meeting on Tuesday. We come back from summer break. We are actually going to lay all that out and say, this is what we've come up with for CACs to be able to be part of the conversation and highlight the compromises that they have made and where the city wants to meet them halfway and go, all right, now we're going to help you grow, and you're going to help us, honestly, because we need participation. We need people's voices in order to run this city. So I will say that is my most proud organization that I've worked with to get the community's voice in there. Along with that, you've got definitely nonprofits, you've got development community. I mean, they have their own organizations. You've got the Home Builders Association and the Apartment Association, realtors, all of those that turn into what you said, PACs, and then that becomes very evident during an election season. But my focus in both my terms has been, how do I communicate with you all outside of an election? It's very sexy during an election to say, oh, I've been endorsed by this, I've been endorsed by this. It sounds really great. And then when I said, okay, my first term, I said, what does an endorsement mean, like beyond the election? Like, let's say I win, let's pretend I win. What do we do? And every organization was like, I don't know. So we got to fix that, because I don't want to just fill out a form, an endorsement form, and then you base your whole judgment on that. So in this last election, I got to say to a lot of them, I also have a voting record that you can judge, not just this one form that you want me to fill out. That you're more than welcome to make a decision based on the record that I have with the city. So there's a lot of different, we put them all in a big salad bowl, we mix it up, and that is our engagement portfolio. So trying to strengthen all of those relationships is what I think the job of local government officials is.
I think it's incredible that you're able to balance all the different stakeholders voters and CACs. Like, that sounds amazing. And the fact that it was taken away for a bit, but now it's coming back, and thank you. Like, you're building back stronger in a way that it's like it's more sustainable, and it's taking some bruises, and now you're figuring out, okay, this is what is going to make it long term and palatable for all parties involved. And I really like what she said, because I talk to just different people all the time, and somebody said is like, do people really look at your voting record? Yeah,
Should
yeah,
at the voting record.
I agree. And then it was great to hear somebody saying, look at it, look at my voting record.
Well, it was really evident in my last election because in this NIMBY-YIMBY discussion, a lot of people wanted to say, oh, she's NIMBY, she's NIMBY. And I got to go, have you seen all the development that I have approved? Because I'm against this one case doesn't negate all of the other cases that I have voted to bring housing, affordable housing. Some is not affordable because we need all of that. We need the spectrum like we talked about before. It's a spectrum of housing that we need. And I can't just focus on one aspect of that. And so then when they say, no, I didn't look, I'm like, well, that would be a great start. That would be a great start to look at that. And we should be able to provide that, clearly for them. So that's something that we need to work on so that they don't have to. You ask people to do the work, especially during election, they're going to turn off because they're busy. They've got things to do. They have a life. And so how do we make that clearer? And I think a note for as you vote for any level of government is how transparent is this representative and how willing are they to share that information with you, because it should just be given.
For sure. And I agree. Everybody should look at the voting record. And I've heard like just clever ways that people are getting it out there. Like, one organization like makes memes around them. And so like people else, I've heard just like clever ways of people kind of get out there because it is important. And I do think people should look, but I do think other people expect people not to look.
For sure. I mean, it's a lot. And this goes into a theory that I have just of how we as a society got here. And we did it through the dismantling of education, of how important it is for us to know something about each other. And we rely so much, whether that's on social media or on influencers or whatnot, to tell us instead of reading it ourselves, because everybody can take it their own way. Take a decision and go this way with it or the other way. So we have to be able to critically analyze. I think we've lost that as a society, not just Raleigh, as society in general.
But I think, I'm hoping tools like ChatGPT and like these things, while there is an argument for, is that taking away some of the like the brain power of like having to actually do the work to get the information. I do think it is making people more clever in the way that they're uptaking information, because they know it's like, I have this disparate idea. I wonder what that would look like. And you just put it in a machine and it spits it out to you. And then if you're more interested, then you go the extra step. But I do think from that, like at least the curiosity for knowledge, I think tools like that are helping. So.
And it's really, how do I spark your interest? Because as I'm talking, whether it's to you here or I'm talking to somebody at a coffee shop, I'm searching for, what are you passionate about? Because we get this feeling that, oh, I have to know everything. And then that's overwhelming because you're like, I can't possibly ever know everything. And I don't want to. And that's too much information. But if I can center in and go, what I hear you saying is that you're really passionate about affordable housing. Hey, do you want to join a meeting of our Fair Housing Board? Maybe that would pique your, and people go, oh, yeah, I would. I'm like, well, we have that. And it's a public meeting. So start there. Just take that little nibble of information and start there. And if it breeds you to ask more questions, which I hope it does, then let me help you answer those questions with more information. But my job is to be able to introduce you to all that the city has and all that we offer so that you can tune into what meets your needs, and then you can help me with it. So.
And that passion will push you to add value just into the.
And what you're like, I don't want this being able to teach people on a really granular level what is not sexy conversations, and have this, like, you're a huge part of that. All these podcasts, the groups that educate, we need to keep amplifying that so that we don't have to feel like we're doing it after.
And I thank you. I wouldn't be able to do this without people that actually care to get the information out there. So I thank you. And I think that dovetails into my last question. In 20 years from now, maybe 2025, me and my wife are still here. My son's left the house, but hopefully he's going to school around here. What are we going to be saying about your community, our community, excuse me?
My goal is to reflect not only the visions of what we're experiencing today, but how are we incorporating my children and your children into that vision? Because even though we may look at them and go, "Oh, you're 9, you're 10 years old," they have the ideas, and I don't want to limit their expectations. I want to say, you dream whatever it is. You go to ChatGPT and you create something and you tell me how to do it, and let's do that. I want this to be a place that my children, our children, want to be a part of, whether that's through our park system, which is amazing. And I'm so proud of that department, our parks department, or our downtown, our business community. I want small businesses to know that our community respects and wants them to flourish and wants to be part of that vision for the future. I think we're going to be more of a amplified version of what we are today. And so if that's going to be tech, where in the city is that tech realm? Is it still going to be RTP? Or are we going to expand it? Oh no, I want to see what connectivity means for people. We're very disjointed right now. If you're far out from the city, do you really come downtown? How do we enhance those connections, whether that's through transit or is it virtual as we have these in rural working from home? I want to give the city to be a space of joy outside of what your work is. And I want everyone to be able to build that community feeling. I took a trip with council to Kansas City recently. And it was my first time there. They have a lot of amazing things some things that I'm like, oh, I don't want that. There are things that I want. There are things that I don't want. But one thing that I desperately want for our community, they have everything that says Kansas City strong, Kansas City. They have just hats that just say Kansas City and everyone is proud for there. And I'm like,
Yeah, highly strong.
beyond all of the cool things that we can have, buildings over here and systems, what I want for the community is the feeling that we are in this together and that there's always a home. Whether it's my kids go to college and they go out, they have a home here, and that everyone from Raleigh knows that will be what we emphasize as a government agency, and we actualize it with our community engagement. So that's my passion. I hope that can be a piece of it in 20 years so that will be our legacy to our children.
I love that. And I think that is what I know my family wants. It is Raleigh to be a home, a genuine home. And my son he's 1. So we got
I want to hear his opinion too,
yeah.
all the time. Definitely.
But I want him to feel at home here. Yeah, because we're both from I'm from Maryland, she's from Colorado, but like now it's like this is home. So we appreciate you, and I'd like to thank you again for the bottom of my heart. I appreciate it. It is so important to me that I'm able to speak to my council member as a community member, but then also for our viewers who need to hear people like yourself that are truly passionate and that are authentic. And I think the best thing that people can be is authentic and transparent as well. And the fact that you don't sugarcoat things, the fact that you tell it like it is, the fact that you take the time to listen to people is impactful. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I always tell people I may not give you the answer you want to hear, but I will be right here holding your hand as we talk it through, and we'll come out to I don't know what it's going to look like, but we'll come to some resolution. And that's, I think, government's promise is that we'll walk this very jagged path together and hopefully smooth it out for the future generations.
Well, there it is. So for everyone here at Jentry, I'd like to say thank you for tuning in. Again, I have Christina Jones, council member here in Raleigh, District E, my district. So super excited about that. And thank you, and we'll see you soon.